Girlfriend stole from her dad's store. One quiet packet of screenshots and a clean timeline put cops at the door and forced real repairs. Quick favor. Tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell. Then we begin. I was 18 and boring in all the right ways. Steady girlfriend. After school shifts. A future that felt as straight as the chalk lines behind the grocery loading bay. Her father liked that steadiness. He shook my hand like it meant Sunday dinners, and he trusted me with pallets, keys, and the modest rituals that keep a family shop alive. The store sang a low hymn I could keep time to, cooler motors humming, receipt tape sighing, lemon cleaner lifting into morning air, and I learned to move so quietly the floor itself seemed to nod. She used to say she loved that calm, that I made plans feel real. Then paint began to peel. Weekends slipped into later, texts shrank to single words, and her eyes started sliding past mine as if I were background. A friend whispered what my ribs already knew but would not admit. She had been behind the old gym with a boy who treats rules like dares and apologies like loose change. I did not accuse. I stacked oranges called suppliers and let patience collect like coins in a jar. If nothing was wrong, I would feel foolish for a day. If something was, paper would say it louder than I ever could. One night she came by after close, dropped her tote and her phone on my table, and said she needed a shower. Pipes knocked. Steam curled from the bathroom like a curtain. My dogs lifted their heads and listened. I stared at the black glass cooling on the wood and told myself no. My hand disagreed. It reached anyway, and the quiet night found a hinge. The screen stayed dark for a breath. My pulse tried to pass for steady. The house smelled faintly of citrus and drier heat, the kind of ordinary peace that makes confessions sound impossible. Outside, a delivery truck coughed down the block. Inside, the fan drew a thin thread of cool air across my knuckles. I was the careful one, the boy who keeps receipts and leaves rooms better than he found them, and even I was about to break the rule I quote to other people. The lock surrendered to a lazy swipe and a thread opened like a trapdoor. At first it was cheap romance. His grin in dark lots, her bubbles of laughter about how I was too careful, pictures in a back seat by the mural whose flaking paint every kid in town could draw from memory. Then the tone bent toward theft. He wanted booze and rides and money that did not come with work. She offered shortcuts with a shrug, and the store that had fed us both became their silent sponsor. Grab what you can, he wrote, your dad never notices. Her answers stacked like receipts, weekends, late shifts, camera blinked again, took bottles and trash sacks, skimmed small bills when the line got long, meet me by the loading bay, bring the cart. I scrolled until the scrolling felt like wading through syrup. Dates matched missed plans. Timestamps leaned against those late punches. Excuses now looked like signposts pointing to the back door. A single total crawled across the chat like rot under floorboards, $800 here, then more, not because they needed to live but because easy felt easier the second time. My mouth went metallic. The room tilted. The fan made a dry clicking noise I had never heard before. This was not about heartbreak anymore. This was about a daughter stealing from the man who had built a life out of fruit stacks and grit. I saw her promise on the screen, a brag and a plan, and I felt my anger take a seat so my accuracy could stand. I captured the worst lines first, then the setup lines that would keep a stranger from getting lost, and I watched the gallery of proof bloom like a negative under safe light. Evidence does not need volume. It needs order. The cooler outside the kitchen kicked on. A rattling drifted through the wall. The scent of lemon cleaner lifted as if the house itself wanted to wake up. I kept going, one capture after another, and the story stopped being a rumor and became a ledger with names. I set the phone exactly where she had left it and began building a file that a stranger could follow without my voice. I wrote small captions under each image, back parking behind the gym, the brag about free stock, the little maps of when and how, and I slid them into a plain envelope that smelled like ink and decision. Then I opened a contact that carried weight, her father, the man who had taught me to roll a pallet without bruising fruit and to count aloud so the numbers behave. My message was not a speech, only a hinge. I found this on your daughter's phone. I am sorry. I pressed send and heard the soft whoosh that sounds like metal finding latch. I wiped the table with a cloth that smelled like lemon and waited for the kind of quiet that changes rooms. She came out toweling her hair, water bright on her cheeks, and tried a smile that had always worked. Movie, she asked. We are done, I said, voice even. I know. You should leave. Shock shuffled through masks. Then she slammed the door with a word that rattled the drawer. She thought it was just a breakup. She did not know where the envelope had already gone. Across town, a father stared at paper that would not blink and felt his pulse argue with his faith. The apartment felt suddenly larger, like the square footage of a decision. My dogs circled once and settled at my feet. I sat back down and arranged the proof in order, because order is the one kindness you can still offer when the truth is about to get loud. The envelope waited on the edge of the table, light as paper and heavy as consequence. I wrote the time in a small notebook, a habit I had learned from counting tills. The air tasted faintly of ink and steam. The bathroom mirror fogged at the edges. A drop clicked from the faucet like a metronome that did not care about feelings. I rehearsed one more sentence in case she turned back, but the hall stayed empty. Then my phone lit with a name I respected and the night took its next step. His call arrived like a small bell, his voice rough with gravel and apology, and he thanked me for telling him what he needed to know instead of what he wanted to hear. Then he said he had called the police and that officers were on their way to take the packet and write a report in ink that does not care about family myths. I had wanted sunlight, not sirens, a deliberate choice, not a knock and a badge. Yet theft is not a living room debate. It is a statute with teeth and a form with boxes. After we hung up, the apartment went so quiet I could hear the clock twist the air. I rinsed lemon from my hands and let the faucet run until my breath matched the water. At dawn I walked to the store for opening, and the back office door was shut in a way I had never seen, as if the wood itself were guarding something fragile. The floor manager nodded without meeting my eyes. The cooler hummed a note I had begun to hear as warning. Near noon her father waved me inside. On the desk a neat stack waited, my screenshots, a fresh shrink summary with sharp notes, a short log from the monitor when the aisle camera blinked. An officer's card lay on the blotter like a hinge. They will want your timeline, he said. Give them what you have and nothing you do not. We sat with the fan rattling and made a clean list. Dates, windows, the back door held too long while laughter pretended to be work. He pressed both palms flat, as if steady hands could anchor a room. I left with a copy of the card and the taste of cold coffee, and I knew the day would not end where it started. Outside the loading bay the sun burned on pallet wrap and made it shine like a warning flag. A cashier avoided the lens and counted change twice. I wrote my times in neat lines, no adjectives, because facts walk farther when they travel light. When the officer stepped through the door at closing, pen ready, I felt the room shift toward the kind of quiet that happens right before truth takes the microphone. Morning baked the bakery rack and the day moved like a cart with one stubborn wheel. The patrol car slid into the lane. An officer gathered my notes and copied ticket numbers into a column that made cash sound like law. He said they would match voids to deliveries and walk it to a detective if the lines held. Her father stood by the safe with both hands on the metal as if warmth could stop loss. The room smelled of coffee, steel, and something scorched that did not belong to food. By evening she was booked, not a daughter in a story about stress but a clerk in a file about theft. The boy's bravado failed beside a bench. A trunk gave up bottles with our shelf tags still clinging. I did not gloat. I stalked and swept while locks clicked and cameras stayed awake. We posted new rules in plain letters: 2 people count, 2 people sign, call when the lens blinks. Customers asked where she had gone and I said schedules change, which was true and also not enough. My anger loosened its grip and turned into resolve. The heavy kindness that plans do after rage has spent itself. On my table the envelope waited beside a small stack I kept for myself. The apology note to staff, the line on the shrink sheet underlined in red, the business card with a calm name. When I turned off the lights the store breathed a tired but honest breath, and I knew the second act would be about repair. The night manager walked the aisles and tapped each camera housing like a doctor tapping a knee. The little indicator lights stared back like patient eyes. We moved high-priced bottles into clear cabinets that lock with a soft decisive click. At close I swept the same square of floor 3 times. Back home I opened the folder and wrote 3 lines on a fresh card. Accuracy outruns anger. Structure is kinder than speeches. Keep paper, not grudges. I set the card on top and felt the house settle into a quieter shape. The kind you can live with. The weeks stretched like taffy sticking to every call. Detectives arrived with soft voices and pens that could eat a page in a single sitting. They pulled register tapes and built a spine from voids and timestamps, set delivery counts beside invoices, and watched a thin dark river appear where trust had been. I sat with the audit team after close while the store hummed its tired hymn and we traced bottles that never met receipts and boxes that never met shelves. Her father stood in the doorway taking calls that shortened with each ring. When he hung up he stared at a smudge on the safe as if the metal might confess. The aisle camera got a new lens. The dock camera got a note taped to the monitor. If it blinks, write it down and call before anyone shrugs. A simple sentence began to live on the wall above the time clock. Clarity is kinder than doubt. In the lot the boy tried smug and found silence. A detective did not bite. He asked me once whether I hated him. I said I was busy. Later the detective repeated that line back to me with a nod, the kind teachers give when a paper comes in clean. At night drizzle stitched the pavement and a cruiser idled by the bay while the office light burned low. A quiet knock came at the back door and an officer handed over a short list, property recovered from a trunk, photos of labels still sticky with our shelf tags, and a brief apology from a parent who had not known where their son went after midnight. I filed it all under incidents and felt my anger sit down so resolve could finish the shift. The paper smelled like toner and rain. The photos left a faint glue scent on my fingertips. In the break room someone left a pot of coffee that tasted like courage and cardboard, and we drank it anyway. The officer tapped the edge of the list and said, "Keep doing exactly this. Boring is how truth wins." I wrote the sentence on a sticky note and stuck it to my folder like a banner. Hearings look less like television and more like a school day that forgot the bell. Chairs, a seal on the wall, a clock that stretches minutes until they sound hollow. She came in small, the boy came in loud, and both learned how the room refuses to bend around charm. Counsel talked about youth and second chances. The prosecutor talked about shrink measured in ounces and procedures measured in lines. Her father did not stare at me or at her. He read a short note about trust to the judge and asked to address his staff later about repair. A restitution figure took shape out of reports and was spoken in words that weighed more than the money. The boy's lawyer tugged a sleeve, the universal sign for take the deal. Bravado remembered rent. When it was my turn, the question was simple: why did you send the truth to her father first? Because I wanted a person I respected to see it with both eyes, I said, and because theft at work is not gossip, it is a breach with paperwork. The judge did not smile, but ink moved. A schedule appeared for classes about work and harm, a line about staying away from the store except to repay what can be repaid, and a warning about loud friends near quiet witnesses. Outside, stone steps held afternoon heat and the coffee from the cart tasted like relief with edges. Her father shook my hand and said, "Please help me fix what can be fixed." I said yes and meant it. Behind us the boy lit a cigarette he was not supposed to light and the officer by the door shook his head once and the ember went out. On the walk back to the shop the city sounded ordinary again. Buses sighing. A bakery fan throwing warm sugar into the lane. A delivery dolly clattering over a crack like a tiny drum roll. In the office the clock ticked a straight line instead of a spiral and I felt the day finally find its frame. By late month, the store breathed differently. We moved the high-shelf liquor into clear cabinets that lock with a soft, decisive click. We posted signs by the lanes in plain words: 2 people count, 2 people sign, cameras checked at opening, names written in ink that does not smear. The night manager taped a reminder to the screen: if it blinks, write it down and call. Her father wrote an apology to staff for the stress and to customers for delays while we learned to do it right and signed it with his full name instead of a title. He asked me to help turn policy into tasks a new hire could hold: count aloud, break down boxes where you can see the door, never run a return alone, treat the dock lens like a witness, not a mascot. We held a short meeting before opening. The coffee tasted like courage and fear together. The youngest cashier asked if we were now mad at everyone. No, I said, and he nodded. We are careful with everyone now, including ourselves. In the weeks that followed the shrink report thinned, not to perfect, but to ordinary, and the safe stopped feeling like a wound. On a quiet Tuesday, we tested the system by pretending to fail it. I walked a case to the wrong place and 3 sets of eyes followed it like lifeguards track a ripple. Someone laughed, and the room relaxed into the new normal. The door chimed, the monitor wrote a clean line of time with no gaps, and the building finally sounded like a promise again. We kept a small box near the clock for anonymous notes and it filled with practical kindness. Label the spice aisle better, oil the cart that squeals, rotate the bakery rack sooner. Small fixes added up like interest paid to trust. A regular grinned at the cabinet and said good, make the thieves work for it, and then bought a bottle anyway and thanked us for caring about the floor. That night I locked up and the keys felt lighter than they had in weeks. I kept my own folder slim and honest. At the front sat 3 pages, the apology note, the one summary line on the shrink sheet with the right boxes underlined, and a brief timeline that had turned rumors into proof. The rest slipped into an archive you only open when memory tries to repaint the past. She texted once with a string that tried to be apology and blame at the same time. I answered with a sentence that would fit a file and then blocked the thread. I boxed up the hoodie she had left and returned it in a plain bag with no note. On my next day off, I walked past the mural behind the gym and let the paint look foolish without saying a word. The air smelled like chalk dust and old rain and relief. I did not feel victorious. I felt aligned with the line I drew the night the steam curled under a door and the lock gave up its secret. Her father later handed me a short reference in plain language, the kind you keep folded until the corners grow soft. You kept your head when mine wanted to shout. I tucked it behind my pass with the officer's card and stopped needing to check my pocket to make sure it was there. On the walk home, I bought a lemon soda and watched the dock chalk glow under late sun. The cooler hum had stopped sounding like a warning and had gone back to sounding like work well done. A neighbor who never talks lifted 2 fingers from a steering wheel in a small salute as he rolled past. And I lifted mine back, a tiny treaty between people who share alleys and mornings. Back at home, I taped 3 reminders above my desk where afternoon light hits. Accuracy outruns anger. Structure is kinder than speeches. Keep paper, not grudges. That night, the refrigerator wrote a single calm line through the dark, and I slept like a person who has finally decided what to carry and what to set down. Some revenge burns. Some repairs. I did not torch a life or a store. I drew a straight line and let light run along it until shadows ran out of places to stand. When someone builds a party on what is not theirs, cruelty is easy and clarity is better. If this happens to you, write times in plain ink, collect names without adjectives, speak to the person who can fix the leak, and aim for consequences that outlast your anger. Choose sunlight over speeches. Choose policy over performance. Choose the version of yourself that can hand a folder across a desk without shaking. In the weeks that followed, the shop sounded honest again. The cooler hum counted like a pulse instead of an alarm. The dock door sighed and did not hide anything, and the time clock clicked its small teeth like a metronome that believes in tomorrow. I took one last walk behind the gym and touched a peeling corner of paint. Flakes came away like old excuses. I did not take a picture. I did not send a message. I went home and filed the last page and put the folder where it belongs, front of the drawer, ready if the past tries to rerun itself. Outside, late sun warmed the chalk lines and a kid in an apron learned the dance I learned. Palms on a box, knees soft, eyes on corners. Inside, her father trained a new hire to face a shelf so neat a thief would hesitate. He caught my eye and tipped a nod that meant we are not broken anymore. I nodded back and held the door for a customer. The bell over the frame made a sound I had missed without knowing its name. Would you have gone loud, or drawn the same quiet line and let good paper do the heavy lifting? Tell me in the comments, and if this helped you steady your own hand, tap like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next one.